All right.
Streaming.
Still preparing the live stream. Just give me a second. Okay, we are live and I'll hit the record button and we can start.
So, welcome to day 3 of the 4th annual edition of the Metaverse Safety Week. This is a fundamental event exploring the intersection of artificial intelligence and emerging realities. So my name is Valentino Megale, and as a chair for this track, I'm thrilled to guide you in our discussion entirely focused on child safety, children's rights in this AI-augmented world. Well, my background is in life science research. I'm also a startup founder focused on pain management through virtual reality with a special focus on pediatrics. And I actually joined the XRSI almost 3 years ago, where I'm now mainly involved as a lead of the Child Safety Initiative. And today's focus is actually on the emerging challenges and opportunities in virtual worlds for young audiences. So first of all, let me extend our gratitude to UNICEF and the XRSI Child Safety Initiative for co-organizing today's discussion and their crucial roles in today's event, spotlighting the importance of protecting young digital identities and ensuring their safety in these evolving, fast-evolving environments. So our goal today is to collaboratively develop strategies and actions to safeguard children in immersive digital spaces. And this includes also understanding the risks, sharing real-world case studies and solutions, and discussing practical examples rooted in real world concerning the young audience's interaction with emerging technologies. So today I'm not alone, absolutely. To coordinate today's session, many members of the programming committee will be assisting me online. And I'd like to cite, first of all my co-moderators, Kavya Perman from the XRSI, Shlikavik Achali from UNICEF, but also our timekeeper, Jenny McFall, our notekeeper, Jessica Ray, and Swarm AI representatives, president of Unanimous AI, David Baltax. So our session today, we decided to structure it for a maximum engagement and insight. So it's almost 4 hours with 3 breaks. We'll have 2 5-minute long breaks and 1 longer 20-minute breaks. We're going to start with 7-minute opening remarks, followed by 5 to 6 testimonies, contributor statements from key stakeholders, each lasting 5 minutes. So we are going also to have 2 thematic discussions on separate subtopics, each followed by an intelligence gathering Q&A sessions, where contributors and observers can collectively ask questions and shape our conclusions. All the collective input will be then used also to compile a post-roundtable report with all appropriate attributions that we are going to publish by the end of the year. So let me summarize some basic rules, we can say, of our session. Try to keep your microphone muted, unless, of course, you are not speaking to contribute. Try to use your virtual hand raising to start your contribution. And also try to keep your comments very concise and within the allocated time. We also encourage you to be on video as much as possible. This is especially important when delivering some contributions and remarks. So, before starting, a special thanks also to our lead sponsor, Meta, for sponsoring our event for 3 years in a row to ensure it remains accessible to everyone and free to participate, which is definitely a higher value to everyone. And the programming committee also deserves a commendation for curating a very impactful agenda of great speakers, great stakeholders, and all our community partners for being very active in contributing and supporting us. So now let me actually welcome our co-chair. I'm very pleased to welcome Shlikawi Kachali, advisor at UNICEF. Welcome, Shlikawi. The stage is now yours.
Thank you very much, Valentino. As usual, testing that you can hear me. Can you hear me all right?
Loud and clear.
Brilliant. Greetings to all near and far. And to all of us who have joined us, I will join Valentino in welcoming everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you on day 3 of Metaverse Safety Week. As Valentino pointed out, my name is Shekiwe Kachali, Senior Technology Advisor of UNICEF, working with past technologies, present technologies, and future technologies. And before I go any further, I would like to thank XRSI for managing our rallies and get us together for today's session. As a starting point, and as we continue today's session, I would like us to take a moment to ponder and start with the why. And I believe that when we start with the why, we start with a purpose that is bigger than ourselves. And at UNICEF, we start with a vision of a future where every child everywhere has access to the resources they need to live a healthy, happy, and fulfilling life. We also know that technology can be used to make the world a better place. If for those of you who bother to read certain documents that are issued from the United Nations, the Secretary General's roadmap for digital cooperation makes a point that is very difficult to overemphasize. He asks, the question is not what technology can do, but what we can do with technology. And at UNICEF, we do understand that technology it should be looked at as a building block for solutions, meaning that part of the opportunity lies in our use of technologies to yield specific outcomes that benefit children. We are definitely in a digital era, and as we move towards the broader adoption of these new, exciting, and emerging technologies, we should, all of us, seek to minimize the risks while harnessing the positive potential. What I would like us to think about when we think about the why, in part, is what is that optimal intersection of digital technologies such as the metaverse and the best interests of the child? Moving on from that, and before I return us to Valentino, I would like to remind you that Metaverse Safety Week is a 5-day affair, and we're only into day 3. We have 3 more insightful days ahead of us, including today. Today is on child safety and children's rights, and this is co-organized by UNICEF and by XRSI, the Child Safety Initiative. Day 4 will be cybersecurity and data protection, co-organized by the Global Privacy Assembly, GPA, and XRSI. Day 5, Global Policy and Regulations, co-organized by Global Privacy Assembly, again, GPA, and you guessed it, XRSI. And as we proceed with our discussion around safeguarding the young generation in the AI augmented world, I'd like to have a quick reminder that today's key objectives are to provide an overview where we'll explore the increasing presence of young audiences in immersive digital technologies, sharing and discussing practical examples where we'll delve into issues, concerns, risks that young users face due to their engagement with virtual worlds and emerging technologies, as well as how do we brainstorm all solutions and actions where together we will attempt to identify real-world, short and long-term solutions and actions that address these challenges that are going to emerge from the discussion. Lastly, of course, many thanks to the individuals and representing organizations here today who are going to actively participate and contribute and observe. I'm already saying that they will do that, including, say, the OECD, XRSI, of course. And the full list of the community partners and contributors is available on the Metaverse Safety Week website, metaversesafetyweek.org. To start our discussions, I would like us to focus again on empowering and protecting our children in this digital era, because I know that together we can create a safer, more nurturing online world, including as regards children and the digital rights online and offline that respects and fosters the growth and well-being of our youngest digital citizens. On that note, Valentina, I'll hand back over to you and we continue with the rest of the program.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Shikari. So it's now time to introduce our opening speaker. I have the super pleasure to welcome in this our delocalized digital stage, Dr. Catherine Nix, a clinical doctoral researcher, online harms consultant, public speaker, author, and child-adult trauma psychotherapist. So she focuses her work on cyber trauma, which is actually the trauma that can result from any internet-ready device. And she writes about why we do what we do in the digital spaces. So we're really curious to know more what happens when children start exploring these digital spaces. She is an advocate for children's rights, privacy, and digital explorations online. So, Catherine, once again, it's my pleasure to welcome you on stage. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Valentino. And thank you for both of you setting the stage and everybody that is here today. I am hugely honoured to be doing this, completely unprepared, although I don't feel that that's something I can get away with saying, knowing that some people in here already know me. So one of the things I've been thinking about all day is this idea of safeguarding. So most of my work is working with children who have vulnerabilities in the corporeal world, and those vulnerabilities then transition into a space that is now evolving incredibly fast. And whilst it's exciting, I'm already dealing with cases of children who have been harmed in spaces that involve immersive technology, AI-related technology. And I think what we are attempting to do here is have a conversation about how we safeguard children. So I wanted to think about a philosophical way of thinking about safeguarding. And when we do that, most of the time we tend to look in the spaces of pragmatic solutions where we can prevent harm. And when it comes to that harm, I would say one of the areas that I'm really concerned about with children is the biopsychosocial, but also the harm that can happen on a psychological level to what we might call the psyche of the child. And I think what we're really here to discuss is how do we give these children the tools and resilience and space to explore within an environment that is ever evolving? And how do we do that in a bottom-up and top-down process? And for me, there's something about creating a space here this evening and morning for some people that with our conversations, we can actually create an approach that's very much based in a Gestalt approach, that there are many, many interworking parts, and those parts need to work as a cohesive whole. And in doing that, one of the things that I find myself repeatedly stumbling over and finding difficulties with is the system that exists at the moment. The system around the child doesn't seem to have enough connected parts to be able to protect and safeguard children in a way that's conducive to the word itself, safeguarding. Now, when I think about the approach that technology changes us as human beings, one of the things that I'm seeing with children is they are developing in a world of technology in a way that we haven't got a full, robust literature to fall back on. There are no theories about child development in a technological world at this point, enough to be able to give us that deep understanding of what it is to safeguard a child. Now, where I'm thinking the conversation might take place today is how can we do that from a level where professionals like myself working with a child in a therapeutic space, or perhaps youth services, all the way through to that high level global setting. And how can we do that in a way that is, so I think the word I want here is amicable, and we all have the same kinds of conversational language. And at this point in time, I feel that there is far too much lexicon to be able to do that safely, accurately, and with enough of a cohesive understanding for us as a collective. And I'm hoping that the more conversations we have like this will be better for the child in terms of being able to have those preventative measures, but also what we do when things go wrong. So most of my work is post-event. So it's usually after a harm has occurred, and then how we enable that child to safely navigate the rest of their life, knowing that what they have encountered, perhaps the incident, is within a space where that information can be forevermore accessed and can cause further harm as that child evolves. Now, some of those harms might be in the way that we think of safeguarding children from the point of view of perhaps visual systems. So we don't know enough yet for to be able to talk about macular degeneration, perhaps, or what using this technology might do to the visceral systems, all the way through to how do we create a space where children can engage in community and be safe in doing so. And that's going to require, I think, a really long conversation. And this is one of the spaces where we're taking that very, very seriously. And certainly the conversations that we've had at XRSI about how we protect and do that for children now in terms of safeguarding, and when it comes to their rights in those spaces, in terms of what they can do, should be allowed to do, are enabled to do, and prevented from, so that we can reduce the amount of harm that a child encounters. And then what systems do we have in place to really support the children afterwards? So taking that philosophical lens, the thing that I've been really ruminating over today is, as we start to direct our attention to one particular issue, what do we then miss in that process? So I'm really thinking here that might be something that the panels have a really deep conversation about today. And I certainly don't want to take up the full amount of time here in terms of the 7 minutes, because I think that's exactly what this conversation is about. And I'm really sitting as that advocate for the child that I sit within the therapy room who has been harmed. And I'm going to really hand over that advocacy to the people within the room. And with that, Valentino, I think I will hand back to you in terms of what we can do with this conversation.
Thank you, Catherine. Thanks a lot. And I think you shared a topic that is very often occurring in this field. So reducing the harms to enable opportunities, not to limit, but to enable, to open the opportunities that are provided by new technologies. It's a complex conversation to not be simplified too much. And we will have more opportunities during the session to discuss it also with the questions of the audience and the other contributors. Thanks again. And we now have time for the short 5-minute contributor statements. And we are going to start the series with our first contributor, Jared Kelly, Head of Privacy at Common Sense Media. So Jared, the stage is yours.
Well, thank you, Valentino. It's a privilege to be here today. Is it all right if I share my screen? Just a quick 3 slides.
Yeah, probably yes, no problem.
All right.
Yeah.
How's that look?
We
Great.
see that.
So thank you again for having me here. If folks are not aware, Common Sense Media published a report last year on the privacy of virtual reality. So taking a look not just at safety, but also kind of the data governance, right? How data is collected, how it's used, especially in the context of kids in virtual worlds. So if folks want to read that report, it's available online. You can just search for privacy of virtual reality to read the full report later. But just give you kind of a quick 5-minute overview as we think about privacy, this is really, actually still a critical moment for VR as all these VR systems and technologies and immersive experiences are developed. Now, of course, we're integrating AI into these experiences. We should be demanding better privacy protections for our devices, for our kids, and really, I think, help shape the narrative, the dialogue about what these privacy new laws, what these new regulations should look like, and what the metaverse should mean for all of us. As we think about all the different types of data, that's collected about us in these experiences, is that personal information? Is that sensitive information? Is that biometric information? Different privacy laws have different restrictions on the type of data about our body, about our experiences. So it's important to think about how to best protect the child and best protect their interests in these experiences. But again, thinking about, not just privacy, but safety as well, is all these educational experiences, these have huge benefits, for kids and teens, but there's risks, right? As users experience these type of interactions with different avatars and users, they can experience sexism, racism, homophobia, other types of stalking and abuse. So it's important to think about privacy and safety in these contexts and how data is collected and their experiences. But really, I think at the end of the day, we need to think about privacy in kind of two minds. One's content that's age appropriate is usually, in this mind of safety, but how that data is collected about an individual, how that data is used to maybe change their experiences or persuade them to make different choices in the experience is equally as important. And as we think about what does privacy really mean in VR, if you look at a lot of academic research or other industry publications, there's not a lot of discussions about what privacy should be. There's a lot of privacy discussions about previous technologies as we think about mobile applications and other web-based services, but how those extend into VR really hasn't been the important discussion it should be. At Common Sense Media about a year ago, as part of this report, we got our hands on all of the most popular devices. So everything from the Meta Quest to the Valve Index, the HP, HTC, the PlayStation VR, all of the most popular devices used with kids and teens to really look at the privacy policies, look at the data flows, what data was collected, where that data is headed. And really, we really can't recommend these devices. Users are tracked, which means all that data that's collected, the moment they put it on, is sent to a myriad of third-party service providers. We read all the privacy policies for the most popular VR headsets to get a sense of privacy and how it impact kids. Most privacy policies, frankly, are not up to par. They're not talking about all the different types of immersive body-related information that's collected about these devices. These policies are pretty non-transparent. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, these are new data types, right? These body-related information, sensitive data, biometric data, these need to be transparently talked about in a way that's meaningful for parents and caregivers and educators to make informed decisions about using these devices with children or students. We've talked about as well privacy by design. So the idea that when you put on these headsets, they're as privacy protecting as they can be with the settings designed, right, to minimize the data that's collected, minimize maybe advertising or third-party tracking. So users can then make the choice to opt in to change those settings. All of these devices have third-party advertising, of course, that's displayed within the different app stores and on the devices themselves. Surprisingly, we found of all the devices we tested, only about half had some form of parental control. So I think the industry still has a long way to go in terms of providing those controls to caregivers and educators and folks who want to change the experience to provide a more protective experience for kids. But lastly, with the time I have here, just I think there's a lot of takeaways from today's discussion and other panels here at the conference that we can take steps to change the industry, right? That there should be more privacy protecting settings for VR devices. We should restrict the collection of sensitive and biometric information for only the purpose, right, to provide the experience, not for other maybe targeted advertising, tracking, or other profiling purposes. A lot of folks don't realize that the device itself is collecting a lot of information, right, that could be used for unintended purposes. But when a child or a teen uses a third-party application, right, there's even more data that's collected, right, for different purposes for that third-party company as well. So these privacy settings should apply to the device and to apps, restrict advertising, restrict tracking, to provide the most privacy protecting experience as we can for kids and teens to really just to reap all those benefits that we know that VR can provide. I mentioned just briefly, privacy policies for all of the major VR headsets are not good enough, especially, we talk about parental controls. If teens or kids are able to use a device with parental consent, these policies should clearly, inform parents and caregivers and consumers. What protections do they actually provide kids? Right now, policies don't do that. So there's no really way for parents to give meaningful consent if policies don't actually tell you how they're going to protect kids differently from maybe other consumers of the device, or over, consumers over 18 who are maybe monetized, through the use of the VR platform. And again, right, this is about advocacy. This is about changing laws. This is about having a great discussion with experts like yourself on the panel today to really work through these issues. They're complex, they're evolving, they're changing. AI is now, going to change that as well, that calculus of how these different systems integrate. But at the end of the day, whether it's AI or it's VR, it all comes down to privacy. It comes down to what data is collected, how is it used, how is it used for the benefit of the child or rather than the benefit of the company. So a lot to digest, a lot to talk about, but it's a privilege to be here and happy to talk more about these issues. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, Gerard. Thanks a lot. Time now to welcome Anne Hobson, Policy Manager at Meta. So welcome again, and thanks for joining us. Anne, the stage is yours.
Thank you to Valentino and also to XRSI and Kavya for inviting me to speak, and also for your continued interest in both emerging technologies and user safety broadly defined. As mentioned, I'm Anne. I'm on the Reality Labs policy team at Meta, and I cover immersive social experiences. My role includes both getting feedback from a wide range of people and also inputting that into product counseling. So making sure that we're thinking about a number of equities from privacy to safety to accessibility when designing these features and products. We at Meta are still very much in the beginning of our journey towards building the metaverse. In this talk, I'm going to ground us in what is going to be different about metaverse experiences, and then what challenges this creates for key policy areas like safety and privacy. And I'll do a deep dive in safety in particular and talk about our recent progress in our multi-layered approach to keeping folks safe in our immersive social experiences. First, the metaverse is made up of digital spaces, including immersive 3D experiences that allow you to feel close to people in a virtual environment. People will be able to access a wide variety of experiences, from education facilities to workplaces to social activities, without having to physically be there, which means there are new opportunities for access and productivity. There are three key factors that are going to make interactions in the metaverse feel more like those that we have in our daily life. That's ephemerality, embodiment, and immersion. First, ephemerality. The metaverse is going to constitute a shift towards live speech-based communication that will often feel as transient as face-to-face conversations. Second, embodiment. The metaverse will also be able to communicate not only through typing or looking at a screen, but you can also communicate with your hands. Avatars will reflect our real body movements. In many cases, they already do, and this will allow us to communicate more expressively in real time. Immersion. In the metaverse, we will communicate in ways that make us feel as if we are actually in a specific space with other people, like coffee shops with friends. These factors ultimately mean that people will experience the metaverse in a way that's much closer to physical world interactions than to using, say, a mobile app or a website. It's closer to this virtual layer that anyone can experience on top of the physical world, where you can have a consistent digital identity and a wide range of ways to represent yourself. I will never forget when my brother and I had a long-standing conversation where he was a bag of Doritos and I was a character from Zelda: Ocarina of Time. So I'd like to dive in now to how we're approaching safety in light of these complex and different factors. So our approach to safety is multi-layered and built with youth protection in mind. One of the top layers is parental supervision tools. Teens 13 to 17 are automatically blocked from purchasing or downloading apps that are rated above their age unless their parent approves it. Parents can block Quest-specific social features, such as parties or calling, and posting as to Facebook from VR, for example, and also developer mode and PC link, which facilitate things like sideloading of content that is not on our store. We launched the Meta Family Center as well, which provides a single place where parents can supervise Quest and Horizon Worlds usage, along with parental supervision in Instagram, Messenger, and Facebook. Parents can also manage now how long their child can use their Quest each day, schedule breaks from the device, And we offer the ability to cast VR experiences to more surfaces like phones, browsers, TV screens, so that parents can more easily monitor their kids' headset experience in real time. Finally, parents can initiate supervision as well as the teen by sending an invite. Norm development is often overlooked, but is super critical to fostering sustainable communities. And one way that we do that by design is through our community guides in our social experience Horizon Worlds. So you can find them in popular worlds and they help you orient new users. Another is the thanks feature, which when you thank someone for example, being a good sport or for showing you around for the first time you're in the experience, their avatar glows to show that they were a recipient of someone's gratitude, which encourages positive behavior. I want to note that our experience for teens has also been evolving for Horizon Worlds. We limit interactions between teens and adults they don't know. We have the strongest privacy defaults on, so teens and preteen users have their profiles set to private, and this prevents unintended sharing of their user details and app usage to others. Personal boundary and voice mode are on by default. What this means is teens can't get too close to anybody who's not their mutual follower or understand the voices of those that don't follow them back by default. And then we have mature world and event ratings to prevent teens from finding, seeing, or entering spaces that contain 18+ content. We now also allow Quest users 10 to 12 to partake in age-appropriate VR experiences in a parent-managed environment. This is with additional safety and privacy protections for those accounts. So preteens use parent-managed accounts, which require parental setup and have built-in supervision features. Horizon profiles for them are also automatically set to private so that people can't follow preteens without their parents' approval, and that's only modifiable by parents. Parents have control over all apps their preteen can use, and we provide them information to decide whether MetaQuest 2, 3 are right for their child and how to make that experience comfortable and safe. They can also manage how long their preteen can use a headset each day. And same thing with teens, can schedule breaks. Parents can also delete tween accounts and access the view and download your information for their tween. And then we limit the use of tween data required for their MetaQuest to work properly by default. So parents can consent to additional use of data, for example, for product improvement or for personalization. But by default, the personalized content they see will only be based on age, language, and an approximate location for surfaces like Explore, Search, and Store. Our policies are a core layer I will not mention. We have the code of conduct and virtual experiences, and this outlines what is and is not allowed on our apps and in our store. And it prohibits content and conduct that does not align with our core values across the company, like safety, privacy, dignity, and authenticity across the platform. Developers may also establish their own rules above and beyond this code of conduct. And the most important layer is people. So those are the folks that are using our product, who help mediate behavior, build community and norms, and then leverage the tools we provide to sanction those that are not following those communities and norms. There's also the folks in this room, so the ones we collaborate with to inform responsible product development. So to conclude though, safety is not a given. Our work in this area is not done. We've made progress in the last few years, but it's quite clear that we can't do it alone, which is why these conversations are vitally important, especially at this stage of development. So with that, I'll turn it back over to our host. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Anne. Thanks a lot for your contribution. And let's move now to Donna Fraser from BBB National Programs. So we're open to listen you. Donna, stage is yours.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me today. I'm really looking forward to learning and understanding more about the space. For those of you who don't know who BBB National Programs is, we are a self-regulatory nonprofit organization based in the United States that really has two tracks of compliance and self-regulation in the advertising and privacy space. In my role, I oversee all of our privacy programs, as well as our children's advertising review unit, which, despite the name, advertising also is in the privacy space. We've been KRU has been around for 50 years. Some of you know us without even knowing us. If you've seen a TV commercial that says batteries not included, that was a standard that KRU came up with many, many years ago with regards to how are we making proper disclosures in commercials. So we've created advertising guidelines, and we deal with obviously many of our stakeholders, our brands, large brands, advertisers, as well as content creators. Earlier this year, we received a lot of feedback from companies about the challenges they were having in creating environments for children and teens in the metaverse environment. We realized that the metaverse, it's immersive, it's virtual, it's global. It's this always on space where children and teens can go to socialize, learn, create, shop, game, and share. But we know that, again, there's so many benefits to it. It can create educational and innovative and entertaining environments for children. I'm sometimes jealous of some of the benefits that children are having in these immersive environments, because the experiences that they're having, especially in school and with educational technology, the learning experience is so much more immersive than anything that I would have ever experienced. However, we know that these spaces also create potential risks and harms. These can include everything, and I'm sure that we will talk about this. I'm not saying anything that anybody here doesn't know already, that, these risks include bullying, body image issues, sexual exploitation, harassment, allowing children to reveal too much personal information, making unintended purchases, and exposure to self-harm, violence, and gambling. What we decided to do was create our own Metaverse working group and talk to companies about how they could best create experiences in these environments for children that, at least from the advertising perspective, took into consideration the guidelines that KRU created over 50 years ago with regards to avoiding blurring in advertising and non-advertising content, making clear disclosures. We have an environment nowadays with influencers that didn't exist 50 years ago. So how do we make clear disclosures there? Avoiding the use of manipulative designs, some call them dark patterns. I prefer to call them what they are, which is manipulative designs or other deceptive tactics, and really using clear and conspicuous disclosures. So we kind of leaned into our 50 years of experience trying to kind of steer brands through decades of technological shifts and associated evolving regulation, both in the children's advertising and privacy landscape, by creating this working group and creating these guidelines that I hope will be helpful as part of our conversation. Is certainly not the end all be all. We recognize that this document, which we did provide and everyone can see it, it's one step, I think, in the right direction. It does not intend to resolve or respond to all of the complex scenarios within the metaverse. But one of my personal goals in my role is to ensure that everyone who is touching the space where children have a responsibility to do the right thing. Companies come to us for help, but my first question to them is, if they don't want to be a good actor, then we don't have the space to work with them. I'm not here to try and convince someone to do the right thing, to determine that they have to do the right thing. They should want to do the right thing. So we want to work with the good actors, and hopefully that will penetrate the market. The other challenge that we obviously have is here in the U.S., we do not have, we don't have a federal privacy bill. We have COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, which has been enacted and enforced for over 20 years. But some would argue that it's outdated and needs to be updated, and that's a conversation for a different day. It does only deal with those children who are under 13, not inclusive of 13, but under 13. And as we all know, there are conversations about teens, and I'll get into what we've been doing in that space as well. But I think that it's extremely important to understand that we need to meet children where they are. And one of our other initiatives that we're working on is how do we help brands understand that they need to take the responsibility on. We keep putting things on the parents And we need to understand that they may not have the resources to understand everything. And the platforms, the brands, everyone who's kind of touching this space needs to take responsibility when you invite a child into these environments, onto this platform. How easy are we making it for them to not just get in, but also get out unscathed? And one of the things that we also did was create a privacy roadmap for companies that was intended to help companies have these internal conversations with their development. So everyone who's involved in creating product, we created a roadmap that essentially what we did was we took all the risks and harms that we could identify and we worked backwards from those. And we said, okay, if these are the risks and harms that you're trying to avoid and you want to, let's just say you want to do collection of personal information, what questions do you have to ask yourself? And then what practices do you consider so that you can avoid the risks and harms associated with the collection of personal information, such as unexpected uses of data, normalization of over collection of data, the increased risk of data breach, the creation of a larger digital footprint outside of a child or a teen's control or awareness. So we created a really robust map that asks a lot of hard questions that hopefully will help companies have those hard conversations that they don't always have, but also, this is truly privacy by design, advertising by design. I think advertising is getting lost a little bit in the conversation with regards to protecting children's safety and privacy, because it is all driven by advertising. If we want to continue to have a free internet, the only way to do that right now is with advertising. So I don't think that we can forget that that's a huge component that we need to consider. And again, our goal for 2024 moving forward is beyond how we inform companies about how to do the right thing and what that looks like, but how are we working to create good digital citizenship? Here we're talking to, and I know that others here are working on it as well, is curriculums in schools about that children should have access to, all children should have access to, with regards to how to be a good digital citizenship, a good digital citizen. Your behavior offline should mirror what you do online. So I'll leave it at that and turn it back over to our moderator.
Thanks a lot, Donna. Thanks. We move on to Stephen Woslow, Digital Policy Specialist from UNICEF. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me, Valentino?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. So hi, everyone. I'm a digital foresight and policy specialist at UNICEF. Hi, Shlekiwe, and hi, everyone. And thank you for having me, XSRI and Shlekiwe. So 5 minutes. I really wanted to just touch on 2 points, not to kind of build on what's already been said. So this year, actually, I popped in the chat, UNICEF released a short paper on the Metaverse, extended reality, and children. And we looked at all of the kind of what it is and looked at the opportunities and risks that we see, which have been covered here. So I won't go there. I don't need to cover that again. The 2 things I really wanted to say as we think about the strategies, to come up with strategies to protect children and to bring in safeguards, is maybe one is to look at technological convergence. And what I mean by that is if we think of Minecraft and Roblox as early indicators of where the metaverse spaces could go, then we need to look at other pointers. And something like generative AI is something that's very much, for the last year, in the lives of many children and all of us. We know that generative AI is going to be a part of virtual environments, whether those environments are immersive or not. One being used to create the environments, but also the characters that populate them. So if we look at generative AI, we don't have a lot of data around how children in the global south are using it. We know that kids are using it, but we don't know to what extent. So we have to look elsewhere. So just two quick data points I'd like to share. The one is from Ofcom in the UK. And they show that out of online teenagers, which is most teenagers in the UK, 13 to 17-year-olds, 80% are, or 4 out of 5, are using generative AI tools and services. And if you look at the younger age group, 7 to 12, it's 40%. The most popular is my AI friend in Snapchat. So that's the one. The other point was some research recently shared at the FOSSI event with teenagers and their parents, 6,000 teenagers and their parents in Japan, Germany, and the UK. And when they asked them, what are the 2 ways that you're most interested in using generative AI in the future? Out of those 2, the option of using it for emotional support was selected 35% in the US, 29% in Germany, and 50% in Japan. Okay, so basically, we know that this is likely one of the use cases for generative AI, and then think about what that means in virtual environments. The other point to mention was this really great point that Professor Yuval Noah Harari made, that if this is the age of where's the battleground for attention, and all of our attention really as we go online, in the future the battleground may be for intimacy as we deal with not just people, but with AI that we talk to and that we trust and that we exchange and that we look to for emotional support. So I think I'm just mentioning this really just to think about what is happening around the world, this conversation around virtual environments that will have an impact on virtual environments and that we need to be engaging in. And where do we need to highlight those points that are really different around virtual environments? So if we think about AI providing emotional support, as Anne said, what does embodiment mean on the level of trust in that exchange? So that was the one. And then the other was really touching on what Kwakiwe said about really thinking about children in the global south. And all of the suggestions and many of the features that we've heard here, like parental control and parental engagement and teacher support, are excellent. But they assume so much. They assume a fairly privileged context where your parent has the time to be engaged, or is literate, or can help you set up those parental controls. And so how do we think about making solutions work in very different contexts that are increasingly going to be where the next user base really comes from for a lot of the services that we are looking at. So that's really it. I hope that's helpful. The areas that we're looking at are to do research, try and understand these impacts, and to really use foresight, including with young people, to better anticipate what some of these changes will look like coming down the line, and including what it means for children from the global south. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Stephen. So let's move to Lisa Robinson from the OECD. Welcome, Lisa. Great to have you here.
Thanks, Valentina. Great to be here. And thank you to you and Kavya for the invitation. And thank you to all the speakers that have just gone before me. It's really great insights. So just very quickly, for perhaps those of you that don't know, I'll just explain a little bit about what the OECD is. So we are an international organization of 38 member countries, which are made up of some of the sort of bigger democracies in the world, like-minded countries. And we operate on a multi-stakeholder and cooperative basis to help countries with or provide guidance in relation to policy direction. One of the things we work on and what I work on is children in the digital environment. And so what I thought I might touch on today is sort of the work that we've done in relation to children in the digital environment and what our philosophy is coming out of that work. And how it might be applicable here to what we're talking about, the new risks that are emerging and what countries and policymakers can do to try and address those risks. So the OECD has a recommendation, which is a soft law instrument which is basically a set of principles and agreements that all our member countries agree to. So that means you have 38 countries, or in fact, in this case, we have 40 countries because we have some non-OECD countries that have signed up to this recommendation, that basically agree, look, this is the kind of policy that we want to put in place in relation to children in the digital environment. And the reason that's beneficial is because, as we all know, this is a global space with global problems. And the reason why that's beneficial is that then you can have, different countries trying to make like policies, which will mean it's going to be easier for kids from region to region to have sort of equitable solutions and equitable access, and have equitable and their rights addressed equitably across different regions. Our recommendation is the way that we look at considering children in the digital environment is the recommendation is grounded in providing principles for governments and other stakeholders to put in place in their policies that really seek to promote the benefits of the digital environment while addressing risks at the same time. And so one of the things, sort of two of the things that are kind of a main themes running through the recommendation, which is what is overarching of our work, but also is the policy guidance that we give to governments, is sort of moving away from what we had seen a few years ago in relation to and self-regulation and a lot of responsibility in the hands of companies to be able to mitigate risks themselves with limited oversight from governments and regulators. And so what happened when we developed this instrument is that the governments and our partners that we worked with were sort of recognizing that this was really not working in the interests of children. And that agreement, that recommendation was signed a couple of years ago, and I think we've really kind of moved even further along from there since that time. The other thing that we really sort of injected into the recommendation, and I think both Stephen and Donna have also really touched on this, is that we can't be putting everything in the hands of parents, that children need support from, also children need spaces that are safe, and that parents are not always in a position to be able to understand really the technology. And children do not always have, as Stephen rightly pointed out, parents do not always have a responsible parent, and that while parents have a fundamental role, they really need support in fulfilling that role. And that support can come from governments, but also from technology companies themselves. So one of the things that we're working on now is the concept of digital safety by design. And I think while that doesn't necessarily, we're not necessarily looking at that from a particular sense of immersive technologies or generative AI, one of the reasons we're looking at digital safety by design is this is a concept that if we can get it right, then hopefully that can put in place protections and safeguards for kids for all technologies and technologies as they advance. So today, sort of the major concern in technology is generative AI and what risks is this bringing to kids, but tomorrow it might be a different technology altogether. So we're looking at the concept of digital safety by design, which is words that are coming up at the national level, but also in a lot of international guidance documents, including our own, in relation to encouraging companies to put in place digital safety by design, and also encouraging governments to regulate for safety by design. But there may not necessarily be a good understanding of exactly what that means and what that would mean, to borrow Donna's language, as a sort of a common language across different regions. And so that's one of the things that we're looking at. And so I might just inject that into the conversation as something that we can all consider as to, happy also to hear feedback as we're developing our work as to what comes out of this conversation.
A gentle warning on time, a gentle warning on time.
Okay, thank you. I was just about done. So, I'll end it there, and I'm really looking forward to the rest of the conversation.
Thanks a lot, Lisa. Once again, thanks a lot. And we are ready for our final contributor, which is Larry Magid, CEO at Connect Safely. Welcome, Larry.
Thank you. So to begin with, those of you who've seen me before on webinars may possibly know that I'm wearing new glasses. And these are not just any glasses. They're the brand new Meta Ray-Ban smart glasses, the version 2. So everybody smile. Hey, Meta, take a picture. So there I got your picture, and that brings up some interesting privacy questions there. You don't have to use your voice, by the way. You can just push a button, and hopefully you saw that it lit up. The reason I bring up these glasses is because this is a technology that we've been thinking about, talking about. Google did some experimenting. There have been a few products out there. First time I've ever tried it. And my initial reaction, and this is not a product review, and it's not to say that there aren't some limitations and idiosyncrasies. It's not perfect. But my initial impression is this is awesome, that this is a life-changing technology. I have to tell you, that was not my initial impression the first time I put on a VR headset. I thought it was interesting and entertaining, but this is potentially life-changing. I was almost going to say life-threatening, and that may also be true with some technologies. But clearly, the ability to have a hands-free interaction with the world, you know, I've been listening to music, I've been playing podcasts, take a few pictures here and there, making phone calls hands-free, sending text messages hands-free. I'm really seeing how extending reality, truly extending reality, as opposed to creating virtual reality, may actually be the most exciting future of XR. The idea that it doesn't change our reality, it doesn't alter our reality, it doesn't create avatars to represent us, but it actually enhances our integration with the real world. And of course, what I'm wearing right now are a early stage of what eventually may fit into the AR or augmented reality camp. Getting specifically to the topic at hand, children. I, as many of you know, have been a long-term participant in the internet safety world going back 30 years since I wrote Child Safety on the Information Highway for NCMEC. And what I've noticed during this period is that there is always a tension between child protection and child rights. Lisa kind of mentioned, I think it was Lisa in the previous talk, about how there's some parents are checked out. Well, she used a different term. But the fact of the matter is that not all parents are equipped to provide all children, especially all teenagers, with the tools that their teens need to fully explore the world. I'm specifically thinking of marginalized teens, teens whose parents, for whatever reason, aren't able to give permission. There could be a variety of reasons. It could be language issue. It could be lack of understanding of technology. It could be fear of immigration officials, that if somehow I were to agree to something to Meta, somehow it's going to get in the hands of the immigration officials. It very well could be differences with their child. Perhaps the child is exploring alternative sexual orientations and the parents are not particularly supportive of that. Or perhaps the child is exploring different religious or political views that the parents may not be supportive of. So we need to think, especially among teens. So anybody who's talking about extending COPPA beyond 18 needs to realize that teenagers need and deserve, are entitled to agency, to free speech, to participation. And in fact, the UN Convention of the Rights of the Child specifically lay out the fact that children are entitled to freedom of expression, freedom of consumption of media in all forms, real and imagined and present and future. And I'm sure that whether or not they were thinking about social media when that was written, it certainly is written to include social media. So we need to think about virtual reality and other forms of technology. So we need to think about the rights of young people. We also need to think about, how can I say this? Not that we don't need to think about protecting children, but we have to make sure that we don't lose sight of the fact that all of us need certain protections, that many of the things that we talk about when we're protecting children are really things that we need to be talking about in protecting people. Everyone needs to have agency and control over their information. Everyone needs to have the opportunity to have privacy. Everyone needs to be free from disgusting and inappropriate and offensive material, at least have the ability to opt out of it. I'm not saying that what you find offensive is necessarily what I find offensive, and I'm not suggesting we sanitize the internet, but I'm suggesting that everyone deserves an opportunity not to have to be daily and functionally confronted. downside of the headsets is that I'm now getting a text message coming through my ear. So I was distracted. I have to fix that one. And if you're listening, figure that one out. When you're on a webinar, don't play audio. But the idea that it's all about children, it's not all about children, it's all about all of us. And I would say that most of the things that make sense for children probably make sense to at least consider for adults. I'm especially concerned about the impact of harassment on all adults, including young adults. I'm particularly disturbed right now about what's happening around the Hamas-Israeli conflict. I mean, from all sides, the enmity, the vilification, the harassment, the Islamophobia, the anti-Semitism, how it's all playing itself out online. And we really need to figure out how we can encourage that dialogue.
A gentle warning on time.
Thank you, gentle lady. We can encourage that dialogue without suppressing people's ability and right to express themselves. So these are all things that keep me up at night. But in the meantime, I say move forward and continue to develop XR, AR, VR. We don't want to put the brakes on it. We want it to happen. We want to develop it. We want kids to experience it. But obviously, we want to think about all of the things that we need to consider to make sure it's safe, appropriate, and maximizes people's control over their information. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Larry. We now have the right time for a short break, and see you in 5 minutes.
Did I eat your tea? Is it okay for now?
We were on the.
Oh.
Kavya, do you have personalized tech support?
Yes, more than that, actually. There is chocolate bar. There is some vitamin C. There's water. There are like oranges. Like I have all the support.
Goodness, there is no competition. I cannot compete.
Yeah, I'm super grateful. All right, I think it's time, Janae.
I'll hit the recording button and we can start.
Sounds great. Amazing. Hope all of you have had a wonderful break, had some water and all. So welcome back. We will now resume the 4th annual Metaverse Safety Week Edition's roundtable discussion focused on safeguarding the young generation in AI augmented worlds. Many of you know me, I'm Kavya Perlman, and I will be moderating the first thematic session. I am a security researcher and also the founder and CEO of X Reality Safety Intelligence, XRSI, headquartered in San Francisco, as well as in Europe, Turin, and Italy, where Valentino, my co-moderator, and also the president of XRSI Europe, is leading the charge. This thematic discussion will include 20 minutes moderated discussion where anyone from the active contributor can raise their hands and add their 2 to 3 minutes remark on the subtopic. And I'll share the topic in a second. The open discussion will be followed by an intelligence gathering session where all the observers, all the contributors can take part by responding to a strategically curated questionnaire via Swarm AI. At any given point, no personal data will be collected beyond what is already permitted by all of you. But the aggregated output from the exercise of collective intelligence gathering will be recorded and will be published in the post-roundtable report. So let me review the focus of this thematic discussion: emerging playgrounds, preventing harm to enable opportunities for youngsters. In this session, we will dwell into the dual nature of AI augmented environments as spaces of immense learning and creativity, yet also potential risks for children. We'll explore the challenges faced by young participants and creators, from psychological impact to exposure to inappropriate contents. A key focus will be evolving relationship between youngsters and AI agents, where we'll discuss the potential for dependency and manipulation, or over-reliance as we call it. We'll also examine the role of young creators in these environments, understanding how they interact with and are influenced by digital content. Utilizing the swarm intelligence technologies, we aim to gather very similar diverse insight to develop effective strategies to safeguard young mind. And overall, our goal is to necessarily just foster an environment that promotes safe and healthy and creative engagement for children in these digital playgrounds. However, before we begin, I would like to invite Dr. Jessica Stone, psychologist and CEO for Virtual Sand Tray LLC, to set the stage for us with their 5-minute intervention. Jessica is a licensed psychologist working in a private practice in Colorado, practitioner, professor, presenter, mentor, author for over 25 years, and a huge supporter for XRSI's work. Dr. Stone's interest in therapeutic digital tools, specifically virtual reality, tablet, and consoles, has culminated in clinical mental health use and research for mental health, medical, and crisis setting. She's the co-creator of Virtual Sand Tray app, or iPad, and Virtual Sand Tray for virtual reality. Dr. Stone has numerous publications, including integrating technology into modern therapies, gameplay, play therapy theory and perspective, play therapy and telemental health, digital play therapy, and numerous chapters in many, many books. So, Dr. Stone, please take it away.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to start my timer so that I don't have to have any gentle warnings, hopefully. It's very hard for me to not speak a lot, so I'm going to do my best and be concise. So as Kavya said, and thank you so much for that great introduction, and I'm really enjoying everything that people are saying here. I'm a psychologist and a play therapist and specialize in working with children. And we have people such as Catherine was talking earlier, we who work in the mental health realm, we have children who come in who have either had experiences within the digital realms that we are going to help them with, assist, work through whatever needs to happen. And then we also have times when we are joining with them in some type of digital play therapy realm within our sessions. So we have things that the client will bring in, and then we have things that we will bring in. And there are a lot of different components to attend to in both of those directions in a therapeutic environment. First and foremost, I want to at least speak to the idea that anything that we talk about in a therapeutic realm, it has to be enrobed in the fundamentals of confidentiality, safety, and privacy of personal health information, and the importance of informed consent. The arenas that we understand, we need to express verbally and in writing as much detail as we can, talk with the caregivers, and the things that we don't understand, we need to have conversations about those as well. As technology advances, there are always going to be things that we need as clinicians, as professionals, educators, any of us need to continue to do our research, and also to state when it is something that maybe we need to learn more about, or maybe we'll pause on until there's more information. Today, I'm going to try to focus myself very much on 3 key categories. We have play, socialization, and the cognitive impact, particularly within the play therapy arena, but really in general. So many of these concepts that each of us are talking about really do connect with each other in a number of ways. And I wanted to also speak to what Kavya was just saying about dependency and over-reliance. Really, in any of these realms, balance is key. And that can be defined in so many different ways by so many different people. And that's where a lot of this gets a little slippery and sticky and difficult. But even if we're looking at it on an individual basis, which, say, for instance, I would be if I were in a session with somebody, I'm trying to figure out where is their life out of balance and how does any of these digital components, along with others, contribute to that, or even how does it alleviate that, because both can happen. If we're talking about play, targeting areas of exploration and need, and then capitalizing on customizable experiences, which is something that we really have dipped our toe into. I know that it's been around for a while, AI has been around for a while, immersive experiences have been around, but I still feel like we're just dipping our toe into this to figure out how are we going to integrate this in the best way possible, and as is XRSI's main focus and feature is how do we put these protective components in and do this in a way that's very thoughtful and purposeful and intentional. Within play, we're talking about creation, curiosity, educational pieces, socio-emotional pieces, and accessibility. So what I mean by creative is the play can evolve in response to the child's interactions, to their desires, to their needs. And that's really powerful. Long ago, we would have to say, imagine if, and now we can and have something such as AI create that in the session. We have representation and identification. That goes into accessibility, but not only into it. We have physical, we have ways to explore who we are and how we are in this world, what that means to us and in our interactions. We have ways for trial and error and cause and effect. In socialization, in 30 seconds or less, important that we have safe environments within which worlds and assets can be customized to interact, particularly for children who have specific accessibility, identification, representation needs, with abilities to be protected by features within and also self-protection features, and build on what Larry, Catherine, and Donna were speaking about. And then the cognitive impact, language, communication, problem solving, decision making, and planning, particularly in creating and interacting in these environments. And that's my time.
Amazing. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you for being cognizant of the time as well. And now, I was also seeing a lot of the questions being thrown into the Q&A, which, are all welcome. Just now is the time to potentially bring about those concerns, questions. But I would love to direct your attention to what we're really after. We want to gather intelligence, your insights around this very thematic topic that we have set, emerging playgrounds. How can we prevent harm and enable opportunities for youngsters? In like that 10 seconds demo that Larry did, it's like, imagine a child, I think a child's heart, like they would lit up if they could magically just like, hey, Meta, take a picture. That was a clear indicator of how we can hand over this power. So I would love to invite all of you who are panelists. If there are attendees who would like to contribute to this open moderated discussion, please raise hand and we would be able to elevate your access to attendees, to panelists. So use the raise hand function. And if you have any comments, any 2 to 3 minutes remarks that you would like to make, now would be a time. And even questions, like I myself have a lot of questions, specifically around how can we promote these technologies, powerful technologies, but just still find the balance somewhere. And I see Gina has raised her hand. Gina? Oh, Gina wants to be promoted to panelist, so I'll ask somebody. In the meantime, anyone else has any? I also want to invite Nico, who was asking some questions prior and has been very interested in the topic of children's safety and providing opportunities. So yeah, please raise your hand and I will. Nico, go ahead, please.
Yeah, my question earlier was about how we are going to even validate the age of the children when it's out in their hands, and they can, even some platforms, you get like an error if you put under 13. That will basically incentivize the children to fake their age. So just curious, like what Meta and other platforms have done to like protect the children to be identified first and supported, and not to be scared to really present themselves.
Yeah, and I know, Anne, you're here, but I don't want to put you on spot. I'm totally happy to even take that question. But since you're here, if you feel comfortable, it would be lovely to have some response from you.
Certainly. So I want to first acknowledge like how much of a challenge age assurance is for the tech industry overall. Some of the ways that we've been dealing with some of the unintended consequences of folks potentially not desiring to put their real age in is for youth. We have verified parental consent. So what that looks like is for that parent managed account for 10 to 12-year-olds, we require them to set up that account, the parent, so that the age is accurate and they can confirm the details, and it defaults into those safer parental supervision modes. We also have reporting available everywhere across our platform in apps that we run, but also at the platform level and in apps that we do not own. You can basically flag potential under 13 accounts to ensure that those accounts will be reviewed, and then for folks that are in the checkpoint, so in other words, they have to provide an ID or some form of verification to regain access to their account. What we're focused on is making sure that there is a wide variety of ways that someone can do that. So for example, on Instagram, you can use a feature such as EOT, which is on your mobile phone, you can take a selfie. The other way that's traditionally been done across the industry is verification via a credit card as well, that may have your name on it and thus indicate that you are over 18. There are challenges and flaws with each of these approaches. But by providing a wider range, we can ensure that those that don't have, or that only have an ID or don't even have access to an ID, have a way to ensure that they can either regain access to their account or make sure that their right age is represented.
Thank you, Anne. And I just put the link for Yoti. I wish Julie Dawson was here with us. And, she's the policy lead at Yoti, the third-party platform for age assurance. Has developed quite a good technology, I would say. Of course, there are flaws, but yeah, those are the kind of solutions that I have seen would help us find some balance there and not just check the box 13. Donna, you are next. Would you like to share your remarks?
Sure. I just wanted to just comment on the age question. I think what we need to think about, one thing we need to be mindful about is under what circumstances do we need to know the exact age of a child, right? I think that the technology is such that we can determine estimation. There's all these different ways to do it, right? We have declaration, which is telling us your exact birth date, your exact age. Then we have estimation, and then we have verification. I would point people to the Future Privacy Forum's work. I could put the link in where they have a really great infographic on the different types of ways to determine age. But I think we really need to pull back a bit and think about under what circumstances do you need to know who the child is versus what do you need to know in order to just know that they fall into this age group and this environment that they're in is safe for this age group. And how do we make those determinations? What are the factors we're looking at? We certainly don't want to create a database of children under 18. We certainly don't want that. And then we also have the issue of when a child ages up. If we're considering 13 to be the marker, what do we do when a child ages up? And how do we encourage children to be honest about their age, to get the environment that's right for them? Because for so many years, we know it's happening, right? We know children are lying about their age. Why are they lying about their age? Oftentimes it's because they think they're not getting access to what they want access to. So how do we create environments where they feel like I'm getting what I want, I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything, and I don't have to lie about my age to get access to where I don't need access? So I think that's part of what we should be thinking about when we're thinking about how we're integrating age and asking the age.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Donna, for your comments. I really did like, oh, Lisa, you have your hand raised. And literally I was thinking, I got to ask Lisa about, that safety by design. This is something that I've heard a lot from the eSafety Commissioner in Australia, but I would love, how OECD is approaching this for children.
Oh, thanks, Kavya. Maybe we have a psychic connection happening. Right. Or maybe it's a technology that we don't even know exists. Just gave us a psychic connection. Look, I put my hand up for two reasons. The first was sort of respond to the age assurance conversation that we have, and I think everyone's sort of really, landing on this is a really important and complex point. I think I would just say two things. One, we talk about 13 kind of being a magic age, and perhaps maybe it's time to kind of step back and have a look at the different technologies that kids are using and really understand what is a safe age group and what's an age appropriate experience for kids. And just to remember that a lot of the reason that we have 13 as sort of a magic age for what's a safe platform or not is because that's what data privacy laws say. And it hasn't necessarily come from a safety space or more importantly from a developmental and beneficial space for kids. So that's sort of one thing to kind of keep in mind. But I sort of agreed with a lot of the things that Donna was saying about age assurance, but I just sort of wanted to stick my hand up and sort of raise that issue as well. But then I also want to put my hand up to get back to your original question, Kavya, which was about these sort of evolving spaces and how can we make sure that they are these new playgrounds are safe for kids or beneficial for kids. And that's one of the reasons why we're looking at safety by design. Look, we're sort of in the midst of this work, so I'm not really able to say exactly any findings or where we're going, but I can say we're looking at sort of what different international instruments are saying and how what they're saying would be incorporated in safety by design. And some of the things that we're seeing are a lot of the safety things that you would think of. And some of them come at the front end, which is doing, impact assessments and really understanding the technology. If we think about Larry's glasses before, as you raised the point before, Kavya, that would be really fun for kids. But that's not really the only thing we need to think about. There's so much behind that of where there is a risk. And so we're looking at sort of what safety assessments might need to be done in the front end as you're designing a service to sort of really understand, okay, well, if, and I'm borrowing, being very cheeky here, I'm borrowing Bevan Kitchen's words, as I've heard her say, we're thinking about what would you do if the end user is a child. And so we're looking at sort of those sorts of things, and then other things that would need to be put in place, both at the front end, but also at the back end. So appropriate complaints mechanisms, sort of easy language for kids, things that kids would be able to understand. So communicating with kids in their own language. And I was thinking about what's an age appropriate experience. And also thinking about what's an experience that will encourage kids to really enjoy where they are and not want to, as Donna just pointed out, sort of push a boundary and leap into something with not safe, while also understanding that that really is part of kids' development to want to push boundaries. So what is safe and where we go. So I think I didn't answer your question. I probably raised more questions, but hopefully that's of help.
Very helpful. Thank you, Lisa. And yeah, as you were talking about safety by design, I also just want to drop in there eSafety Commissioner's latest research that they've just released around Metaverse. And Julie Edman Grant, a huge supporter for XRSI, being a really good friend too. They have published some findings that I would totally want to introduce for the roundtable report. But Shikebe, would love to hear your perspective. I personally know that you're working with ITU to develop standards and stuff in terms of like balancing out the opportunities and stuff. What's your take?
Thanks, Kavya. As Lisa just pointed out, I also have so many more questions, and like you, I have so many more questions and answers. And I'd like to throw some of this into the mix in a way. On your point around, for example, ITU and standardization, in short, what I would say about that is for emerging technologies and any other kind of technologies, we need to think more about proactive governance. So far, we've had a lot of reactive governance, but we need proactive governance that does scenario planning. What happens if these 77 scenarios, how do we mitigate for? And then also to think about, if we are going to legislate and regulate, are we really legislating and regulating to ameliorate the harms that we have identified? And for Catherine, the question I will ask in this case, you don't have to answer now, is what are the existing harms that we should be disrupting? But also, have you started to look at what may be the potential or the new harms that we may not even name? But that's not really what I was going to ask. You mentioned standardization, so I had to say something. I have two questions for Lisa and Donna as the first one. Do you have frameworks that are child rights impact assessment that could be used by digital technology in the broadest sense, whether they're designers, developers, or whatever, child rights impact assessment? And then the second question is for Lisa, Donna, and Anne. And again, we're not trying to put you on the spot, but Meta does many things, so we have to ask the questions. GC25, General Comment Number 25, which, as far as I can see, addresses a rather important deficit in terms of children's experience of digitalization. GC25, I would say, brings together child rights advocates and digital advocates in almost in one setting. It doesn't answer everything, but I think it answers a broad range. To all three of you, what I would ask is, how are you incorporating GC25 in a practical sense in the work that you do? Back to you, Kavya.
Thank you so much. I've been curious about that GC25 myself. I first heard it at a panel at ITU, and it was surprisingly brought up by some lobbyists. So I was very skeptical. I was like, man, people are probably going to use this in the name of accessibility to exploit or something. So this is a really, worth deeper dive. We have to dig further. You mentioned a lot of names, Shikewe. I wonder if anyone wants to respond, but I do see Catherine's hand up, and I only have almost like less than 30 seconds left. So maybe, and Lisa wants to respond as well. So maybe Lisa, quick take, and then I'll go over to Kath.
Sure, I just was going to respond direct to his questions in relation to, or to the questions to me. Look, as far as child rights impact assessment, OECD is not, the work we do is not necessarily so operational. It might be more that you get guidance like that, from your own organization, from UNICEF. Certainly, we're looking at the benefit and the capacity for child rights impact assessments to be used as tools in safety by design, and also in different policies. But we don't necessarily have a particular child rights impact assessment that we've put together. There is a different part of the OECD that works on responsible business conduct, and they have some work on digital, but not necessarily child rights impact assessment. On GC25, I would say, look, our work and our recommendation kind of goes really alongside GC25. We had an experts group that helped us form it. A number of those experts were also experts helping to inform the work of GC25. Both these documents came out in 2021. Obviously, they look at different things and they're directed in different places. Ours is directed at policymakers. But what I would say is that our document is really grounded in children's rights. It covers the 4 pillars of the CRC. And we really look to GC25 in the documents that we produce and in our projects to see where it can complement our work. So I probably took more than my 30 seconds. So I'm sorry, Kath, and I'm sorry, Kavya. I'll mute myself.
No worries. Thank you, Lisa. That's very valuable. And Kath, over to you. And I do want to encourage people to put comments in the chat if you're not able to find the time, if you have some resources. So Kath, you're the last person.
I will be quick.
Yeah, thank you.
I will be quick. So to answer the question, in 2016, I was writing about 40 something, around about 40 harms. At the moment, I'm at the end of the 60s and into the early 70s, and I'm currently writing around something we haven't discussed here, which would be things like crypto, NFTs, and interoperable, I'll get the word right, assets that will be in those spaces, plus the longer term harms that come from data surveillance that might have impacts on children when it comes to, for example, insurance, mortgages, things like that. So still ongoing.
Yeah, thank you, Kath. And so with that, I'm going to conclude this thematic discussion. However, the discussion is followed by a Swarm AI exercise, for which I would love to introduce David Baltex, who is the president of Unanimous AI. They have developed a tool that's called Swarm AI, and will allow us to gather this multi-stakeholder intelligence. And so, David, please take it away.
Thank you very much for that introduction. It is great to be with everybody today, wherever you are in the world. I want to talk a little bit about the company, and we'll run straight into the exercise that was just described. Our company is called Unanimous AI, and we develop technologies that connect people together to harness and amplify their collective intelligence, and enables groups to make better decisions, evaluations, and forecasts. Our technology is called Artificial Swarm Intelligence. It's also known as Swarm AI, and it's based on the extraordinary phenomenon known as swarm intelligence, which is nature's way of amplifying the intelligence of groups of its animals and insects. It's why bees swarm, birds flock, and fish school. They're smarter together when they are alone. Now, humans didn't evolve this capability, so we use advanced technology to bring these benefits to groups of any size: business teams, boardrooms, executive leadership groups, and even organizations and communities. Our solutions have been used by the world's leading universities, as well as the largest financial institutions, market research firms, the US Air Force, and the United Nations. And today, we'll use the Swarm AI platform to combine the knowledge, wisdom, insights, and intuition of you, the speakers and attendees, today. So I'm going to post into chat a link, and we'll ask the organizers please to repost this link to others as appropriate, and to the other kinds of participants. When you click on that link, you'll be brought directly into the Swarm platform. I want to reiterate that we are not collecting personally identifiable information beyond anything that you have already approved. So the intention here is that you will get to participate anonymously, and we will collect the collective's information and insight and perspective. Great. I see that a lot of people are already joining. For those of you on the way, I recommend using a computer or tablet. Mobile devices are not very complimentary of the screen size that we'll be using today. And okay, I see a good number of people have joined us and are continuing to join. That's terrific. For those of you who are not able to participate, let me just double check. Yes, it looks like that we are going to share it as well into the Zoom screen. We really do want you to participate, but if for some reason you are technically unable, you will be able to watch on Zoom. So today we're going to combine your input collectively with the Swarm AI technology to gather insights and unlock the collective intelligence of this group. As many of you have already figured out, when you put your mouse pointer next to that glass spinning puck, your mouse pointer turns into a magnet. Your magnet is green and everyone else's magnet is gold. Your magnet also has some animation coming from it to indicate how it is pulling. Use your magnet to pull on the puck, and in a moment I'll present some questions and a set of answers will appear on the screen. Our goal is to work together to converge on the best possible answer we can in 60 seconds. So pull for the answer or answers you believe in, but remain open to compromise if you think it's appropriate so that an answer can be arrived at in time. A few things to keep in mind as we go through this: the closer your magnet is to the puck, the stronger its pull. You do not have to click or swipe, simply keep repositioning your magnet so it's pulling in the appropriate direction. You will need to pull continuously with your magnet during each answer. If you're not pulling on the puck with your magnet, you have no impact or influence over the outcome. Again, our goal is to converge on the best possible answer for each question by combining the knowledge, wisdom, insights, and intuition of the group. So we'll start with a warm-up question just to make sure that everybody is comfortable using the interface. And I'll post it now into Swarm. And you will see it appear on your screen with a series of answers. What is the most important invention of the 20th century? So now we are going to see this 3, 2, 1 countdown. Please set your magnets while the countdown occurs so that we can be collecting your data from the beginning. And let's see if we can work together to find an answer that maximizes our confidence and conviction. Okay, great. Antibiotics is our collective answer. You'll see in the bottom right corner there, we have a conviction score. In this case, it was 76%, which is pretty good. And that conviction score indicates how well aligned everyone was in the answer to that question. So now we'll move on to our series of questions. We have prepared 5 questions for us today. The first one is, what is the most effective strategy to identify and mitigate the risks of psychological impact on children in AI-augmented environments? So I will post an abbreviated version of that here on the screen. We want to identify which of these 4 are would be the most effective to identify and mitigate psychological risks to children in AI-augmented environments. A lot of strong opinions. We have about 25 seconds left. Let's see if we can find a compromise. Okay, just across the wire. So although child-specific guidelines and filters was the consensus choice, or was the choice of the swarm, it was pretty clear that the second choice, parental involvement in child AI use, was gathering as well a large segment of support from the group. Before I turn it back to Kavya, I just want to mention that all of the input is collected. It's included in the systems analysis, and we will be reporting the results out in the follow-up to the conference.
Amazing. Thanks, David. And since we had sort of a very strong opinion across the two things, especially parental versus the guidelines, any comments there? And I did see Sylvia, your hand raised earlier. Would you like to comment?
Yes, I'm very passionate about this because I have a child. She is old enough. Well, she's not a child anymore. She's a young adult. But I don't feel like those guidelines are going to help, because even though these kids are tech savvy, they really don't even know most of those things exist where they can protect themselves. It's good to have them, but my daughter, to be honest, didn't even really know how to use Word, and you would think she would know how to use, you know what I'm saying? They know it exists, but they don't know how to control it. So without a parent who might know more than them or have experience with this stuff, or even if they don't have experience, but can go and read up on it to tell their kids what they should and shouldn't do, I think that's more important than them having those guidelines. That's just me as a parent.
Understandable. Thank you for sharing that. And I see a couple of more folks, just real quick reflections. Nico?
Yeah, I think I selected that option just because of the word filter. I think filter restriction that is imposed by the platform is more of a solution, and the AI option can be a really helpful tool for us to detect the harm and challenges and be able to filter and guide the information.
Nico, is there any other option that you would have loved to seen on the screen besides the one that we had?
I think AI moderation would be very helpful too. Moderation, I think, has been for so long a big solution to gaming worlds, and now applicable to Metaverse. And, we often think of AI as a risk, but it's also a great solution to a lot of problems because the scaling moderation is very challenging. And so we can personalize the moderation for each user and each child. That would be very powerful, and it would take the burden off of the shoulder of parents potentially.
Great, thank you. And Vandana, quick reflection, and then we'll move on to the next question.
Yeah, thank you. I think it should be a collective responsibility, even though I had gone with the child guidelines and rules. I think it should not be shouldered on one stakeholder. It is very collective. It's companies, the developers, the parental, the teachers, educators, all of them, including children.
Yeah. I do have to agree with you, Vandana, and in fact, you being a part of the Guardians and Shields framework development, shared responsibility, which is, by the way, our second thematic discussion, remains to be, that's what we could establish. If we could establish that accurately, then maybe we have some accurate strategy, or like a really effective strategy, sorry. All right, David, let's move on to the second question.
Very good. Our second question is, what is the best method to teach kids about AI manipulation? So of these four, what is the best method to teach kids about AI manipulation?
Fantastic.
Right.
So mandatory school AI literacy. I think there were other some other aspect. That was the second one. What's that, David?
So what was interesting in that deliberation was that mandatory school AI literacy programs actually did receive most of the support through most of the deliberation. It's not clear to me whether people joined late or participated late. We did start to see actually support for all of the other choices, but in small amounts. So I would open it up to the floor to get more of a reflection on secondary positions.
Nico, is that a legacy hand or you got a comment?
No, I have a comment. I think these days, Gen Z and Alpha especially, they listen to influencers more than their parents or, courses in school. So I think that option, that was kind of surprising that we didn't see much of the consent on that. But yeah, I think influencers can be really powerful for positive impact.
And Shikebe, thank you, Nico. Shikebe.
I was going to comment, one of UNICEF's goal areas is every child learns. And a discussion I've had in certain quarters is, and this speaks to the points that Catherine, Sylvia, Donna were making, that we need to design systems in line with children's evolving capabilities. Should we not then make it almost mandatory? And here I will talk about in different contexts, because again, we may be looking at a privileged setting, but there are children everywhere with resources that are at very different levels, varying contexts and varying levels. Should we not make some version of part of education should be digital and data? Instead of just talking about influencers, how do we mix all of these areas of education? Because having book smarts is one thing, having social smarts is something else. How do we bring all of these together in line with children's evolving capabilities?
Thank you so much. And before we go on to the next question, Janie?
I was struggling with this one. I did not like that question because all of the what ifs popped up in my head. If we have it mandatory in schools, especially in the United States, then we have states, individual states who are going to decide what can and cannot be taught. Like, so for me, I struggled. That was probably the one that you thought joined late. No, I was just struggling with trying to answer the question. And I really just wanted it to be a toss up and it not get answered.
Yeah. Did you like Nico's comment about influencer being one of them?
I liked it, but of course, yet again, all influencers are not always influencing the right things. And a lot of us actually have deals with these third parties, with certain companies that we don't express or expose to our audience. So therefore, we will say, oh, this, that, and the third, giving out information, but it's heavily skewed and very biased. So it's great, but
there's always a caveat. We're going to move on to the next one, Helen, and if it's okay with you, or you feel strongly compelled to comment on this one. Okay, let's move on the next question. David?
Okay, our next question, and I will ask you to bring your attention and set your magnet during the 3, 2, 1 countdown. Our next question is, what is the best approach to reduce youth AI dependency? About 20 seconds left. Okay, I was waiting for this. So brain freeze is not a bad thing. Brain freeze just indicates that we felt strongly enough about some of the different options that we couldn't come to a compromise, that we couldn't arrive at a compromise. And that's really telling. It was very interesting to watch how this played out. Digital detox and education curriculums appear to have a plurality of support to begin with, split with AI for education over entertainment. And then we started to see some people switching their positions and rethinking the question. And then towards the end there, we definitely had momentum towards promote physical activity balance. Well, what is most interesting, I think, also really to call out is that enforced AI interaction time limits really had very little to almost no support through most of that deliberation. So most of the consideration actually happened between those other three options.
Yes, and I think that's why I would love to gather some comments and reflections on this. Gina?
Hi, yeah, I do agree that the physical activity, I've been in virtual world since 2006, working with people with autism, giving them job skills, confidence. And after sort of 10 years of being in the virtual world, you look up from your computer and you realize, hey, where is life? So I think there needs to be some education on balancing the real world, the physical world, with the excitement and the creativity and the learning potential of the virtual world, because it can get addictive and it can, just basically you're human in a physical world. You need to remember that. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Gina. I do think your comment assumes that AI is something virtual and is not encouraging people, because that could be the other aspect, usage of AI to actually encourage kids to be more physical, play more games. But thank you for your comment, Gina. And Nico?
Yes, exactly. Like you said, I think the question was very biased, with a negative bias towards AI. AI is just another tech tool, and it's like, telling our children not to use tech, it just prevents them from opportunities in the future, and AI is just going to take over the whole world. So I don't think limiting is the answer. We need to focus on how to improve every interaction rather than just reducing the time.
Right. That points to the very theme itself, where, we're trying to enhance opportunities and mitigate any harm, but not in the not.
Physical interaction is not opposite of using AI. You could be wearing a headset and doing physical interaction. Not everything equals to, the other side. Like social media is not always toxic. There are always different perspectives, and I think the question was very biased.
Yeah, I understand, and I will take that into account. But thanks for your reflections. So we gather these insights. I know we have little time, so we will move on to these questions. And I think we have 2 more questions, David. Is that correct? Yeah. So let's go back to back, and then if we do have time left, we'll do a quick reflection after those 2 questions.
Okay. So the first one is, what is the best strategy to guide young AI creators against harmful content? You'll see the 4 choices there. And a quick reminder, you don't need to click or swipe. Simply keep repositioning your magnet close to the puck in order to pull on the puck towards the answer that you left. About 10 seconds to go. So that was really interesting. So while mentorship and ethical content creation was the registered answer, it did appear that there was a lot of contention on that one. In fact, you can see that in the 39% conviction score, very low conviction score, and what appeared to be a lot of defensive, what we call defensive pulling, people pulling away from that as the first choice. We can reflect on that afterwards. Let's move straight into our last question. Which is, what is the best approach to make AI spaces inclusive and unbiased for youth? And in almost the opposite experience, we have diverse design and testing teams with a high conviction score of 83%, indicating some good alignment. So if we return your attention back to Zoom.
Yeah, thank you, David. Thank you for helping us conduct this intelligence gathering exercise. And I wonder, Shikewe mentioned, shouldn't all of the above be one of the choices? Which I believe I have to defer to programming committee who curated the whole content. But what do you say, David?
So the primary answer is we deliberately did not include all of the above or none of the above choice, just really for the purposes of trying to force us to see if we could find the superlative, we could find a position that we could think of as our top. But I think it's really important for everybody to know that first and foremost, all of your input is noted, is all collected, is actually included in those calculations of the conviction score. And as somebody pointed out in one of the other days previously in MSW, is that as we all have recognized, many of these are not mutually exclusive answers. These are not things that we are going to simply pick and then move forward with. These are things that we feel are important, most important perhaps in some cases, but they're also not things that we are going to, the other ones are not things that will be ignored along the way. So I'm just repeating that actually as a lesson learned, as an insight that we came to in one of the previous days of the sessions.
Thank you, David. And Kath, I would have to agree with you. The context is key here. And in most of these decision-making, context would really change. Yeah, Vandana, yeah, I completely agree. Any other quick reflections? Else we would probably take a break at this time. Is that right, Jamie? We are at the break time. How many minutes do you want to permit break? You're on mute.
15.
15 minutes, yeah. All right, I don't see any hand raises, but yeah, we did establish that context would really change the responses in different scenarios. So with that, I really want to thank everyone, especially David, for being here with us today to help us guide through this whole intelligence gathering exercise, and all the observers, all the panelists. Let's take a 15 minutes break, and then we'll return to our second thematic discussion with Shikewe. And yeah, so get some food, break, water, bio breaks, and then we'll be back. And the session will remain open for all.
We can start the session.
Are we ready to start? I know I hear you. All right. I hope everyone had a good break, and I hope that you can still hear me. Welcome back to everyone. We will now resume the 4th annual Metaverse Safety Week edition roundtable discussion. This particular one, the focus on safeguarding the young generation in the AI augmented world. For those who just joined us, my name is Shikiwe Kachali, Senior Technology Advisor at UNICEF. And as we go into this session on safeguarding the young generation, the AI augmented worlds, I would like us to hold a thought in our heads as we get into the contributor discussions and before we get to moderated discussion, that for children, what we have is that children are affected by both the presence and the absence of digital technologies. And this is inclusive of the metaverse, the internet in general, AI, as has been evidenced by the discussion that has gone on before us. I will be a moderator for the second thematic discussion, which will include a 20-minute moderated discussion with our active contributors being able to raise their hands and add 2 to 3 minutes per remark on the actual subtopic. After that, we'll have an open discussion, and then this will be followed by an intelligence gathering session where all the observers and contributors, meaning all of us in here, can take part by responding to a strategically curated question by Swan AI. At any given point, no personal data will be collected beyond that already permitted by all of you. However, keep in mind that the aggregate output from the exercise of the collective intelligence gathering will be recorded and published in the post-roundtable report. Turning to the focus of this thematic discussion, we are looking at embracing shared responsibility, uniting parents, guardians, big tech, and policymakers to safeguard children in AI augmented worlds. And this discussion will explore the shared responsibility in safeguarding children in AI augmented environments. As children increasingly engage with AI-driven platforms, it becomes imperative for parents, guardians, big tech, and policymakers to work together to ensure their digital safety. We will look into how each stakeholder can contribute to this mission, focusing on developing safety protocols, ethical guidelines, and educational initiatives. This collaborative effort aims to create a unified approach to protect and empower children, ensuring their experiences in AI augmented world are not only enriching, but also safe and respectful of their rights and their needs. And the goal being to establish a cohesive strategy that underscores our collective responsibility to foster a secure digital future for the younger generation. To start us off, I would like to invite Jenny to set the stage for us. Jenny is a founder of Black Minecraft, apart from being the timekeeper for this session. She is also a diversity, equity, inclusion, and safety advisor in Metaverse. For those who don't know or are not familiar with Black Minecraft, it focuses on the need for diversified representation in the gaming space, specifically within the Minecraft creator and gaming communities, content creator. She's also a content creator and a professional speaker. Without further ado, Jenny, I will hand it over to you for your contribution.
Thank you so much. You guys have had so many amazing points and everyone hit into what I was going to say. So I love it here. But my biggest thing is the fact that we do not ask enough for a collective shared responsibility. Unfortunately, a lot of parents are going to be buying VR headsets, buying different games, buying a lot of things for their children this holiday season. And you know what they do? They buy it, they give it to the kid, and then they live the rest of their life, right? So not all the times is a parent actually able to always just sit down, go through all the safety features. And yes, on one hand, you can say, well, that's bad parenting. But on another hand, what if the parent just does not know? So focusing on shared responsibility means that each entity will be able to contribute, therefore helping the others. So as we are a collective today, we are a collective of professionals, enthusiasts, even some people that just might want to know more, right? Our responsibility in this moment in time for this Metaverse Safety Week is to reach as many people in different areas. Lawmakers. How do we talk to lawmakers? How do we talk to policymakers? How do we even know whether or not they even know what they're talking about? Because half the time when it does come down to safeguarding children, we only talk about advertisements because revenue is king. We never actually talk about the real deal safety. I am 30 years old. The first time I went into a metaverse experience, the first time I cut on a VR headset and I went into a shared space with people of different ages, I was violated. As a 30-year-old, I was violated, and somebody tried to touch my hair. I felt so immersed and so violated, it made me sick. And now I'm thinking as a child, whenever we see the word end user, think of child. Replace end user with child, and you will be very concerned and you want to do more. So that's what we need to do. As parents do need to be involved, but how would they get that involvement? Whether it be by programs that are given free to all different communities, no matter what their status is financially, no matter what minorities they are, or maybe we can even do youth groups at schools. We all need to be able to provide access to the education so that we all know not only the fun parts of what makes this experience fun, but then also the safety issues. I, for one, think that policymakers need to be part of the discussion. Whenever we have conversations like this, they need to be the ones who are invited. And then we also need to have experiences where we go into VR with them, where we show them the ropes, because how are they going to make a policy when they don't even know how to cut on a VR? And things like Discord, which is a third party, people don't realize that's where a lot of these kids gain access to being violated. Parents don't know about it. A lot of adults don't know what Discord is. So it's that education factor, on and on again, digital literacy for every single group. Furthermore, asking a child to govern themselves is, in my opinion, not always a good idea. When I was 11, I made it seem like I was 13 so that I could have a MySpace account. I did whatever I wanted to do. Did my parents know? Well, I went to the other window so that they wouldn't see. So there needs to be things set in place even on these platforms that allow us to, govern what children have access to. So all in all, it's shared responsibility. It can never be on that of just the parent. That is unfair. The parent has to parent, live their own lives, go to work, do everything. All right. Policymakers can't just do it. Why? Because they don't know all of it either. They have so many policies and so many laws to look at. Platforms can't do it just by themselves. Why? Because honestly, I don't trust kids sometimes. They are very nifty. They know how to get around things. They know the loopholes. So all in all, I want us to really focus on what we can all do as a shared responsibility. If you are a lawmaker, if you are a parent, if you are an educator, if you are a young adult yourself watching this, chime in. Let us know what is important to you and let us know how we can help course correct, but then also be proactive so that we don't always have to be reactive. And that was my TED Talk.
Thank you very, very much, Jenny. Is this actually going to be a TED Talk? I see someone raising their hand before we can even get into anything. Before I can invite Anne, I will check if there are any other hands. No, there aren't for the time being. We will start with Anne. What do you have to say to this one?
Yeah, I wanted to start by saying I love the language of shared responsibility. It's very consistent with how we approach layered responsibility in terms of privacy and safety. I didn't go into specifics in my initial talk about the nexus between AI and XR technologies, but wanted to take a minute to do that now. and talk about what I think is the most important aspect to begin with, which is transparency and how that might look for youth that are interacting with AI in some way. So AI more broadly conceived has always been central to VR and immersive experiences because it's the basis of the breakthroughs in computer vision. So that helped us ship MetaQuest at the beginning. One of the coolest part of applications for AI in immersive social experiences is to help people, including youth, be able to express themselves if they don't yet have the specialized skill to develop or create experiences. So it might actually be prompt commands or some way of being able to describe and therefore experience the world that you just described. There would have to be immense amounts of guardrails around that. To talk a little bit about transparency, though, and I think where this comes into play is one of the unique aspects of what AI agents will be like in these types of experiences. We do not have AI agents embodied in our virtual immersive experiences at this time. But one of the things I think is of vital importance, especially for youth, is being aware, A, that you are talking, that there isn't, that you are talking to, you're in the same place as a non-human AI character. And that B, when it is listening to you, being able to know when you are being heard and therefore understand that it is responding to you. I think one of the things that I struggle with the most in thinking through these types of experiences, and the reason I'm super happy that we are focusing on this topic as a group right now, because this is very much something that is going to be part of the metaverse when it's fully realized, is the wide range of embodied AI that you could have. Everything from a talking rock to you enter a space and there's like an embodied voice in that space, but maybe not physically there, to a humanoid. And I think there are different considerations to take for each. And I'm curious to hear where people's heads are at in thinking through what privacy and safety mitigations to apply to ensure that youth are experiencing these AI systems in a way that is sustainable and responsible.
Thank you very much, Anne. And I see that Vandana may have a reaction or a different question. And before Vandana comes in, I'd like to throw something into, again, the mix, not for Anne, but for everyone in general. And whoever wants to comment can comment on this. We talk about shared responsibility. In a way, I think that's almost a cop out. I would also like to hear about shared value, because there seem to be some who, what are the advantages of all of us being in this space before we talk about shared responsibility and what we should as a collective be responsible for? And yes, Catherine, shared accountability. I would like to hear about shared responsibility, shared value, and shared accountability. Thank you very much. Vandana, you can come in, please. Thank you.
So I was just wanting to touch upon the AI Act, the deal that has been recently achieved on December 8th, which is kind of touching upon all the points that you just made. So, for example, emotion recognition technology will be prohibited in workplace and in school systems. So, right. And then there is a human human impact assessment and so forth. So some of the points are being covered, and it's very early in the game to really know how that will be implemented.
Thank you, Vandana. I believe Sylvia's hand was before Donna's hand. Am I correct there? Sylvia.
Yes, the value of the metaverse, I'm gonna say, with like all emerging technology, to me, is it kind of levels the playing field, that anybody can get into it from anywhere in the world. I'm originally from Africa. I live in the US, and I know a lot of people who are in emerging technology that are happy that it exists based on where they are in the world. I mean, first world nations, maybe it doesn't mean anything to them, but people who are in developing countries, it means a lot more because they have access to things that they never had. Even though there's risk, there's reward to like education and different things. So I think it's good that we have this technology for kids, especially in education, because kids, like I said, in Africa, if they have the smart board, they can probably have access to things that kids in America have, kids in Europe have, that they don't have in their local communities. Even though it's a scary place, it's a place that levels the playing field for everybody.
Thank you, Sylvia. Donna.
Sure. Sylvia, I think you're right. Technology can be a great unifier across cultures, across countries. And I think it's a wonderful thing for children to be able to connect with people who are not in their same little circle. However, I'm going to go back to what I said in the very beginning of today, which is about good digital citizenship. And this goes to your question about accountability. I think we have, as we raise children, we have conversations with them about stranger danger offline, right? You should be having the same conversation at the same time about online stranger danger, right? You have to start talking to kids. They're getting devices in their hands earlier and earlier in their lives. And you have to start treating that the same way that you treat their behavior in an offline environment. If we start to make distinctions, then the notion, and we've seen this now, right? People know that if you bully somebody in person, someone's going to call you on it because they're standing right next to you and they're going to hold you accountable. You can hide behind anything and anybody in an online environment and no one can hold you accountable. You have monitors and things like that. But in a sense, people feel like they can get away with a lot more in an online environment than they can get away with offline. And I think we need to be thinking about the values that we're instilling in children with regards to how their behavior should reflect their offline behavior in an online environment. The sooner we can get to a point where we're having that conversation and instilling that, and part of this requires funding by governments to get the money in schools to create these curriculums. We keep creating these legislations, but what needs to be attached to these laws is the financial support for teachers, for schools, for students, for parents to learn about this, to feel empowered to help children. The accountability is everybody, right? It takes a village. It takes a village offline, it takes a village online. And we need to stop having these offline, online conversations and understand that the online environment is this generation's norm. This is what they're born into. And we need to recognize that. We need to meet them where they're at. But it doesn't mean that they should think that their behavior in an offline environment should be any different than what they do in an online environment. And I think accountability, again, comes from all of us collectively coming together. The challenge is there's so many cultural differences. The way that privacy and safety and autonomy is valued here in the US is not the same way it's valued outside the US and many European countries and other places. And I think when we're dealing with a technology that is a global unifier, that's part of the challenge that we need to figure out how we address. So I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Donna. And for those of you who already have hands up, I will ask you to forgive me for the time being as we move on to the next part of the program. But what I would like you to do is, if possible, to make your comments in chat. And if they are pertinent to what we'll be seeing in the Swarm AI, to also bring your comments in at that time. What we will do now is go into the Swarm AI. And at this point, I will bring David Valdez in. David, are you still here with us?
I am just finding the mute buttons again.
It goes missing routinely, doesn't it? Every day in every meeting.
Seems to keep moving.
It does.
So yeah, thank you very much. I would ask everybody to please return back into Swarm, and if we can repost the, I can actually repost the link for anybody who does not have it yet. Just hold on a moment. I have just posted into chat. If the powers that be can repost it, please. Thank you for everybody who can see it. Again, as people rejoin, and for those of you who never logged out, simply put your mouse pointer next to the glass puck. And as it comes close, you will see that it turns into a magnet. Your magnet is green. Everybody else's magnet is gold. If you're having any difficulty, particularly if you never logged out, you might consider refreshing your browser tab. That should take care of any issues that there were, and you'll come right back in. So again, just put your mouse next to the puck. You will see your green magnet. You don't need to click, you don't need to swipe, just continuously position and reposition your magnet. If you are not pulling on the puck with your magnet, you have no influence on the outcome of the question. Remember, we are looking to work together to find the best answer we can to a series of questions. And the first question of 5 that we will ask in this section of the afternoon is, what is the most appropriate role for parents in kids' safety in AI spaces? So I will post that question and 4 options for your consideration. Set your magnet now during the 3, 2, 1 countdown so that we can have your data collected from the very beginning. And let's see if we can find an answer that we can all best agree upon. Great. 69% conviction there, which I actually think it almost felt a little higher than that, just from watching how many people were actually pulling for that option. Would you like to pause here, or shall we move forward?
I would say we can do a quick pause. From what I'm seeing, the options or the choices have disappeared from my screen. I would have liked, there was the option that was the most popular. I would like to hear from people how they actually interpreted that. I don't know if we all understood it the same. Gina, if you would like to come in and make a quick comment, and then we'll move on to the next swarm question.
Hi, yeah, thanks again. I just wanted to comment about Donna was saying about the funding for teachers and schools, but what I found as an educator in virtual worlds, sending autistic people out to employment, is the employers were not qualified or suitable to engage the students and put them back to square one, basically. So I'm thinking there needs to be funding to help teachers be qualified in understanding this, and this will necessarily mean that they actually go in and experience virtual worlds, because you have to experience it to understand it. You can't just talk about it. So wondering what people say about that. I know it's not relevant to this question, but I wanted to address Donna.
Thank you, Gina. And what I was going to say is, do we have a quick comment on the actual question that we have just been answering? David, what was the question, if you could remind us, actually?
Yes, I actually, and I also just posted the answer set into chat. But the question was, what is the most appropriate role for parents in kids' safety in AI spaces?
All right. What I think what we will do in the interest of time is, if you could post that question for us in the chat, David, and then give us the second question. Give us the second question first, and then possibly post the first question in the chat also, so that we can refresh our minds.
Yes. So moving, if you bring your attention to Swarm, The next question is, what will be the most effective in keeping big tech accountable for child safety in AI? Most effective keeping big tech accountable for child safety in AI. Okay. So while the swarm did arrive at regular audits and transparency reports as its overall answer, mandatory child safety features in AI appear to have the second highest level of support for that question.
Brilliant. So let's bring a couple of people in. Gina, is that a legacy hand? Jenny, shall I bring you in?
Yes, sorry. I'll put it down. Thanks.
Thank you. Jenny, on the first or second question, please.
I think that these questions, although they are good, they still do miss the mark. There needs to be digital literacy. These lawmakers, these parents, they don't know all of this. We can't just expect it. We speak a different language. When you know the experience, when you work around the experience, you know the language. We can't just always say, do transparency reports. We can't say parents interact with your kids. We have to ask, do you guys know what's going on? Have you guys ventured in these experiences? Do you guys understand the risks? So either way, I would love to see more questions in the future, of course, about what kind of trainings, what kind of digital literacy programs are we willing as a collective to provide so that it's no longer fining, it's no longer blaming parents, but it's educating and growing together.
Thank you, Jenny. Vandana, the last one for this one before we get back to the questions.
Can I just respond to that? Basically, you're right there. Parents are not going to be investing the time unless it's made important and attaches into their values about their children. One of the biggest barriers of getting people into virtual worlds is they're phobic of, they're like, no. It's such a hard sell. It really is. So believe me, I've been there.
Thank you, Gina. For any others who've got any more comments or questions, please post them in the chat, and then I will bring you in because your slot was taken, but please.
Thank you. I chose to have mandatory AI safety features because I was somebody who has worked in organizations approving launches, products and apps. So I understand by default, this is the best method that you could assure that no product gets launched without AI safety features. Everything else, it's layers after that. So they should be fine, there should be penalty, there should be laws, strict guidelines and so forth. But by bare minimum, we need to have AI safety features before the launch. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you, Vandana. David, it will bring you back if you could lead us through the next two questions with a batch.
Yes, absolutely. Our next question is, what is the highest priority step that policymakers should take to ensure child-safe AI environments? What is the highest priority child safety step that policymakers should take? Okay, and again, strong opinions about what are likely to both be good and high priority actions. The two that received the greatest support were the International Standards for Digital Safety and Support Digital Literacy for Kids.
And we'll go to the next question.
Okay. Our next question, as I get that queued up, what would be the most effective way educational systems can contribute to preparing children for the challenges of AI augmented worlds? The most effective way educational systems can prepare children. Perhaps our highest conviction score of the day, 87%, for adding digital literacy and AI to the curriculum.
Thank you very much, David. And of course, thank you everyone who participated, because as David has said, collective intelligence, highest priority child safety step policymakers should take, and then the most effective way educational systems can prepare children. Do we have any comments on that? Catherine hasn't come in so far. Yes, Catherine.
I'm just making sure that I'm going to say this in the right vein without critiquing the systems. I find more often than not that we tend to leave the responsibility with the children for the playground we created, and now we're kind of attributing to them that they're responsible for the behaviours they have for the climbing frames, etc., etc., etc. And I really struggle with this kind of question.
Good, thank you, Lisa.
I think Catherine said what I wanted to say in a probably a much more succinct and poignant way. But look, I sort of looking at these questions, and listening to the conversation, we seem to be drifting towards talking about digital literacy and the responsibility of parents and the responsibility of children, which which really gives me pause. We're looking at ways that we can support children, and digital literacy is a super important part of the puzzle. But I just don't want us to get bogged down in that and lose focus on the responsibility of, as Catherine just said, the people who are providing the playgrounds, and governments in regulating what happens on their playgrounds. And so I just kind of wanted to make that observation that digital literacy is really a super important part of the puzzle, but it's just one part of the puzzle, and it's really important that we don't sort of focus on that to the detriment of focusing on the responsibility of, as Catherine rightly said, the people providing the playgrounds, and the responsibility of governments to have oversight there.
But one would think the responsibility of governments to legislate, regulate, and govern even. Do we have any other questions, comments, suggestions around this? David, how many questions do we have left? One? None?
Just one more.
Oh, let's go for it then.
Okay. Our last question is, what is the most effective collaborative strategy to create a unified approach to safeguarding children in AI augmented environments? So I will give you an abbreviated version here on the screen. What do we think the most effective would be most effective to create a unified approach to safeguarding children in AI augmented environments? All right, and then before we start the reflection on that choice, I have posted the question into chat. Since that was our last question, you can close your web browser or exit Swarm, and we will pick up the Swarm part tomorrow. But I will ask you to turn your attention back to Zoom for the balance of the conversation.
Brilliant. You make a good point, David, that people actually have to switch between Zoom and whatever browser people are using to get the Swarm. Most effective to create a unified approach to safeguarding children. That's also quite loaded. Do we have at least 1 to 1.5 comments before we close this subject? Caveat.
Yes, so I saw that we were all very convinced about framework, a sort of a global digital safety framework, and I have not yet come across any similar framework or an effort. I do want to, for the sake of the Roundtable report, let everybody know that XRSI Child Safety Initiative is working on what is called the Guardians and Shield framework, where Guardians is sort of like the shared responsibility we talked about. The Shield is the technology and the tools that can be used by the parents, by the collective stakeholders. So I'll just share the link out here for anyone who wants to be part of this effort. It's still in the early stages, and Child Safety Initiative is, kind of trying to facilitate that gap or fill that gap and facilitate this research. That one, and right here is also another one. Thanks, Kaylee.
No problem, Kavya. Thank you very, very much. And that brings us to the end of this subtopic, and I can do a quick synopsis of what is we've had a robust discussion, I have to say, as robust as it can get over Zoom, with people trying to find the unmute button. And this is both a complex and complicated issue. I would say from the response choices, the multiple choice say that David showed us, when I jokingly said, should we not have an all of the above? I believe, though, that shows us the trade-offs that we think we also have to make in this world that we live in. Because technically, usually, all of the above doesn't normally apply for many different reasons, which we won't go into now. And we looked at shared responsibility, and we asked, should we also be talking about shared value and shared accountability? However, as we said, children are affected by both the presence and the absence of digital technologies, Metaverse included. And Sylvia pointed to, as part of child rights, the opportunities for us to enhance child rights through the Metaverse, say education, every child learns. But this brings in the questions of competing priorities, competing child rights. Which rights are we honoring and which rights may be violated? Which brings us to the legislation of the offline and offline environment. How are these two supposed to be married if they can be married? And on legislation, we touched on how do you have legislation? What do you do with enforcement and with compliance and resourcing that goes with legislation? Standards and codes of conduct. The question would be, are they enough? Where would one seek redress? Where would to have safe standards and codes of conduct? And generally, your governance as a collective, we are datafied subjects with data collected by so many, at so many points. Data being collected via routine parts of our lives. And being digital is almost a precondition for participation in life in many areas, even those that are low resource settings. These are at least what I gleaned from the discussion that we have. And I would like, if people have any more to post in the chat, that would be good to hear as well. In closing, I think we have a few minutes left for the whole session, if I'm not mistaken, Jenny and Kavya. In closing, I would say that we need to remember back, not just the competing rights. When we talk about digital divide, we should also be looking at how can we include more into this digital world while still respecting their rights. Some of the research that we have done is say as at 2020, we have 1.3 billion children between the ages of 3 and 17 who lacked access to the internet, with girls disproportionately affected. And yet, of the number of people using the internet in general, young people are the ones who are most likely to connect to the internet than the rest of the population. That is a juxtaposition. How do we balance that? Where are the compromises? Where should we be making that balance, is what I would say. And with the recognition that the digital transformation of society affects not just the lives of children, but all of our lives, as Larry said, this has significant implications for overall well-being of children and future opportunities. And what I would leave us with at this point is, we talked about frameworks, we looked at the responses and choices that accompanied David's question, where we talked about, say, digital frameworks for children. But I would ask, digital frameworks when we don't quite know what the impact of living in a digital world is, where children are surrounded by digital systems, how do we reconcile that? That is the thought I will leave us with. On that note, I will hand back to Valentino to do the closing. Or before we do that, it seems, Nico, do we have time for Nico to have a quick comment?
Just a quick one. Everything you said is amazing and beautiful, and I love this conference. This was so fruitful, and I just hope that everyone leaves this session thinking of an action item that they can do in their organization and their activations. And without action, none of this is gonna change. So I hope, like, by next year when we come back, we're all going to be more proud that we have done something positive and collective.
You make a good point, because what I would say is, I had started by talking about challenging ourselves and asking ourselves the why. In this case, I want to say, to add to what you have said, what I would challenge all of us here is, when we start with the why and talk about what are the practical possibilities, because those are endless and they're only limited by our imagination, I believe. If this story is still being written, what kind of story do we want to write as contributors in this collective? Because we have the power to contribute to this story and to write this story. Jenny?
I really do love this segment a lot. I know we could all sit around a campfire and go and deep dive in everything. But what I do want people to start thinking about is that children are not a commodity. The goal of these big tech platforms a lot of times is to utilize children as a commodity. The goal is to get them in younger, so then that way force feed them ads, force feed them the way of life. So then when they turn 13, because remember 13 is that special number, then they can have more purchasing power, which to me is odd already. So I do encourage you guys to also have talks with children. One thing that is always lacking when it comes down to these talks, and it's because of time and everything like that, is usually that we don't ever really get to hear from children. I have unfortunately met a young girl that when she was even younger, so when she was around the age of 13 and 14, had an experience where she was being groomed through a Roblox interaction. I have also come across somebody that almost got kidnapped through VR chat. So without them being part of the discussion, without them really being a voice and having, like their own convictions, we a lot of times all we can say is, due to research made by such and such, we don't know how they obtain the research all the time. We don't know anything else. They could just say whatever, and the lawmakers will say, okay, well, due to that research, then fine. But we still need to really talk to children. So if you guys are educators, if you guys are parents, if you guys even are not educators and are not parents, but you guys are influencers, have the talk. It's not just what's in the metaverse, it's overall internet safety. Have the talk. Find out what the kids are doing online. Be a part of those experiences. Or even if they like to watch content creators, find out what they're watching. So that's all I ask, is that we do more involvement when it comes down to child safety, to actually include the child in that safety talk.
Thank you, Jenny. And all that remains from my end at this point is to thank everyone. Thank you, XRSI, and thank you everyone who I will not name because I will leave someone out. But thank you to everyone for all of the contributions and for everything else that you have brought to this and given this session the life that it had. Valentino, I will hand back to you to take us away.
Thanks a lot, Shikari, and thanks a lot, everyone. I'll take just a few more minutes to complete this session. So, first of all, let me make a round of thanks to everyone. I thanks every observer, any contributor, all the community partners for all the support that we got to organize this event. Because in the end, this is the result of months of work. It's a great collective event that we are meeting all today, but it's a result of many weeks and months of work behind. Of course, thanks a lot to Meta, our lead sponsor, for making this event possible, of course, and also to the Australian Human Rights Commission. I want to thanks again to the UNICEF and to the XRSI Child Safety Initiative that co-organized this session and that guided basically today's discussion. I want to thanks again all my co-moderators, so Kavya, Perlman, and Shlikawi for the great job. Thanks to David and for the role of Swarm AI in supporting this conversation, in triggering this very challenging aspect of finding the consensus around very challenging topics and challenging aspects. Of course, if you want to share some links, to share some insights, just feel free to write to us at info.xrsi.org, because we are going to prepare the Roundtable report that we are going to publish by the end of the year. So feel free to still contribute to the development of this document. I want to remember you that today is the day 3. We still have 2 more days. The day 4 tomorrow is all about cybersecurity and data protection. And the final day, day 5 on December 14, is all about global policy and regulation. And so to wrap up the entire session, let me share that today we discussed fundamental topics about child safety that are embarking, all these new generations that are embarking in these emerging realities. Today, it's not only about XR. Many times we talked about the convergence of many technologies. Today is all about emerging realities, augmented, enhanced, improved, thanks to AI. Thanks new smart automation tool that enables us to converse with machines. And I want to add another point, which was very interesting to contribute with all of you and to look at you when we were answering the questions, during the Swarm AI sessions, because actually the questions were designed not to propose solutions. Swarm AI was involved to potentially help us find a consensus, but all these questions were made to stretch our consensus and to find a commitment. And we find all of you very committed in proposing an alternative, because all those questions were designed to find out what is still missing in the global conversation about the topic of child safety and emerging technologies. Because in the age of AI, the quality of the solutions really depends on the quality of the questions. And what we showed today is that if the questions are still missing points, we cannot find solutions. What Shikari said is that, okay, it's great to talk about responsibilities, but responsibilities depending on what values. If we don't share the values, we are just like those magnets of the Swarm AI session. Everybody is moving to another direction because everybody is moving towards another kind of hierarchy of values. So let's think about this. What are the values that we want to preserve in an aligned way and to align technology to those values? So just to complete, I want to say that all the time that we invested today in this session is honestly a sign of respect for the new generations, because we want, actually, as also Catherine said at the beginning, we don't want to regulate because we want to limit. We want to regulate because we want to enable a responsible innovation. So all of you have been part of this journey together, this compressed session today. Thanks again for being here. This was not to scare anybody about the risk, but it was to build in a more sustainable way, more solid way, we can say hope and a positive future for us and for the new generations and for the future adults. So thanks again, and see you soon in asynchronous ways, offline, and also to the next sessions of the Metaverse Safety Week. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.